what you just saw is a very common mistake, and it's called whiskey throttle. So this is what happens. So in this particular incident, as the foot peg touched the ground, it kind of lost his momentum and he let go of the clutch completely, right? So there's no clutch involvement whatsoever. So this is what happened. Gave it a little bit of throttle, which does what? Pulls you back. And when it pulls you back, it does what? Gives you more throttle. And pretty soon you're fully stretched out. Right? And you can't reach up to go to the clutch because you're getting pulled back because of the throttle. So that's what happened in this case. So to prevent this, whenever you're teaching brand new riders, you always tell them cover the clutch at all times. If anything happens, pull on the clutch to take away power from the motorcycle. The problem is people get taught that in the very beginner course because they don't know how to ride, but then they continue that on like out in the twisty mountain roads on their own bike. Now, if they get nervous, they pull on the clutch going through the middle of a corner, which is something you don't ever want to do. The clutch is only for shifting and starting and stopping. You don't use the clutch in a corner when you're in the twisties, FYI, in case you didn't know that. I get asked that weekly. But for low speed stuff, we're doing my MotoJitsu practice, playing around. So he was going to the right, hit his foot peg and it kind of lost control of the clutch. And when that happened, a little bit of throttle was given, pulling him back, and then more throttle and then more back. And then he went up the curb, bike tipped over, no big deal, broke off the clutch lever, totally fine. Bike had protection, he had good gear on, so it wasn't an issue. Lesson learned, right? If anything happens, just really try to maintain control of that clutch for low speed turning. That's why clutch and throttle are the two most important controls for all low speed maneuvers. Even the cops here, when they go through their course, it's only clutch and throttle. They don't even use the rear brake when they're learning how to do all this stuff because those are the two fundamental controls. Later on, once you get good, you add the rear brake and it'll take you to the next level. So to prevent yourself from whiskey throttling, two things. Make sure you always cover the clutch just in case, you give it throttle by accident or a little bit more than what you wanted to. You can always pull in the clutch to take away power or just to control your speed. That's the main thing. Another reason why this happens is this. Let me show you. So sometimes people, whenever they go to braking, so say they're on the throttle, they're going to the twisty mountain roads, they're coming to a stop, and they roll off a little bit maybe, but they reach up and they start to squeeze the brake. They start to squeeze the brake, but they also give it throttle at the same time. You see that? So they're doing both. And then now they're giving it throttle and brake at the same time. Like, what the heck? They let go of the brake with all that throttle. Whee! Then you go flying. Then you're just in the same situation, getting pulled back and giving a lot of throttle. So whenever you go up to the brakes, make sure you go to 0% throttle. Wrist goes up, and it's only your fingers pulling backwards. It's not your wrist and everything going down at the same time. This is also very common to beginner riders. When they're doing emergency braking practice, they're coming down, they just reach up and they squeeze and they do both at the same time. So make sure you go 0 throttle. You see that? You go up to the brakes. Raise your wrist to make sure you're 0 throttle. Make sure you're 0 throttle and then you're only squeezing backwards with your fingers. And the whole whiskey throttle thing, that could happen for a lot of reasons. Maybe you're just riding in third gear, just riding around. You hit a bump, you hit some uneven pavement, it jerks the throttle and you get pulled back. And now it gives you more throttle and now you're just hanging on for dear life. So a lot of things can happen like this, right? So in that situation, the thing is, it's very easy to see like, oh, he should have just done this in hindsight when you're not the one in that situation. Because once you're fully panicking and you're going, right, it happens so fast. And panic means it's an intense fear that loses all capacity. You lose all your capacity for self-help. So you may know to pull in the clutch, maybe hit the engine cutoff switch or do something to prevent yourself from accelerating directly into whatever. But in that moment, you're just completely filled with fear because you're like, right? So that's why you practice a whole lot. You practice and you always be aware of, okay, the clutch is pulled in. If you give it throttle, nothing's gonna happen. You release the clutch to take away the power and everything. And if you're riding down the road, be aware if there's bumps, if there's dips, if there's deep potholes, uneven pavement, construction areas. So in those types of situations, slow down a whole bunch, maybe even cover the clutch. You may not have to use it, but cover the clutch just in case you're knowing, hey, if I go over a bunch of bumps right now and I'm in first gear going 5 miles per hour, if my body or hand gets rocked back and forth in first gear and you have a bike that's pretty powerful, you're gonna be shooting off pretty damn fast. So make sure you have that clutch ready to pull in, maybe to go over top of the bumps and then slowly ease out the clutch as you go over it to prevent that whiskey throttle or that aggressive throttle input, which you weren't expecting to happen in the first place. So hopefully this video helps. Like I said, my buddy's okay. Broke off the clutch lever, so had to get the bike towed, but no big deal. Get a new clutch lever put on, and he was totally fine, had protection on the bike. He just went up the curb, landed in the grass or in the dirt, no big deal. So there you go, lesson learned. Hopefully everybody could take something away from this and get out there and practice. Don't forget to hit subscribe and check out the links in the description for the links to my books, my app, discount, courses, all my gear that I wear, and everything else you can imagine. Instagram, everything.